He's the size of Rocky Balboa. He is a main coon cat.
He's so
Look at
big,
him.
all
Look
16
at his paws.
pounds. Yeah, look at his little
From
paws.
his ear tufts alone, there's like extra cats sticking out of his head.
A long time, it was one of the few places where nerds could go to bone, so that's important too. Super sexy times at the Ren Fair.
What?
Yes.
Really?
Because so many of the people they like camp there and stay there and there for days.
Do you bone at the Ren Fair?
I didn't, because I was already in a committed relationship by the time I was introduced to the Ren Fair.
Did you bone them at the Ren Fair?
No.
Okay. I like the fact that you had to check.
But at that time in the vampire life, and I don't know if this is still true, this meant you were invisible. This is, you turn invisible.
Where did David go?
People can see.
Where did David? Oh, you're back now.
Yeah, I'm back now. Yeah. Or I guess it's not called invisibility in vampire, it's obfuscate.
Yeah.
Hey, David?
That's the power's called. Yeah. I'm here.
As you can tell from this conversation, I am seated with the two oldest nerds I know.
You're going to have to speak up. Because Daddy's hard of hearing. The restaurant that we all ate at the day before we shot Spartacus. It was one of those moments where afterwards I went, oh, I'm going to be friends with that person the rest of my life. Because we just immediately just jumped in and we're like, I
felt I had the same feeling about David. I think he gave me a ride back to my hotel after we wrapped, and we just talked, and I was like, oh my God, I could talk to you forever.
I have a really humiliating memory of that, and then I have the delightful meeting Mark and you. Eddie Doty was running that show, and he specifically reached out to me and said, David, the way the set is built and lit, please don't wear black. Wear anything but black. I'm a big, sweaty dude. And by the time that we got ready to shoot, I was just pitted out in my lavender shirt, like giant sweat marks.
What are you, Tina Belcher?
Yeah, but basically, yes, I am Tina Belcher. Just horrible sweat. I had a really nice conversation with you and Mark, and then you and I became really good friends. So it balances.
People don't know they were friends. More people should know they were friends. Yeah.
And I don't know why. I mean, we've certainly not kept it a secret.
I have.
Your secret friendship. Jasmine's always like, no, I really love you, Todd. Let's just not tell anybody.
Yeah.
It's more special. It's more special if it's just between us.
It's just between us.
So I have a call.
Well, now you're famous, because anytime people be like, I quite like that actor that plays Shaw, and I'm like, he's an asshole in real life.
You're not wrong.
And they're like, really? I'm like, yeah.
No, he's just
insufferable.
He's mean. He doesn't bathe.
Yeah, he told me I have vampire teeth. Yeah. He was like, bitch, get your dog mouth fixed. And I was like, whoa.
Yeah, that sounds like Todd. I think we just end there. Just like that's the end.
That's ProdCoreFantasy.com.
The first summer Todd was on the Star Trek convention tour, I secured a promise from him that his goal was that summer to make Frakes think I'm cool. Because I feel like when I met him the first time, I wasn't cool. So Todd spent the whole summer trying to convince Frakes I was cool. And when sort of we had an exchange the first time, I pretended I didn't know who he was. I kind of nag him to secure the friendship. It was great.
Maybe he already thinks I'm cool because I did that naturally, sort of.
He asks about both of you
every day. I'm sure. He's like, he's like, there was a little.
Oh, Jasmine and David.
Yeah,
yeah. He's like, are you live with them right now?
He's like,
yes, Jonathan.
You got a spot on that Bronze Girls channel?
Yep.
Yeah, Jasmine's been turning Frakes down left and right.
I have. He's called me like 9 times. He's calling me right now.
Her dog mouth.
Right.
He just texted me.
Yeah, he's an animal lover.
Yeah. He loves animals.
One of the pieces of the Progcore Fantasy Project, to bring it back since we're here to talk about that a little bit, is a documentary style actual play. So I've been wanting to do forever a really immersive actual play, like literally sitting a bunch of friends down around a table, putting cameras everywhere and just playing the game rather than sort of like having to do the economics of it, like Crit Roll and Dimension 20 and everybody else do, where you've got to kind of be flat and fast and inexpensive in order to make that thing work
every week.
Every single week.
This is more like a maxi series.
To pay for a documentary. And a couple of times at some of those very streamers you've been talking about, I was very close to getting greenlit, and then somebody would just go down. And so it is the economics of this are all really, really hard. And I think a lot of people, there's nobody out here who's super rich. Everybody's pounding the pavement. It's the most success you can have is, I'm paying my rent, I'm paying my mortgage, I'm making it work.
Yeah. I think what I've loved that evolution of like watching those doors open and close is like how so many of us, like you were saying, we're so busy, we rarely see each other over the last 2 years, have started our own ventures.
Well, that's right. I was going to say, like with Fantasy Quest, firsthand what it's like to kickstart something, to produce something from the ground up. Like and eliminating, we're so trained in, especially LA, to knock on doors and hope that someone opens it for us. And I think with the advent of Kickstarter and BackerKit, we eliminate a lot of the middleman and we just go right to the audience and go, is this something that you want? Because we're capable of making it. And it's no shortage of work, but we are not waiting to be greenlit by some overlords to give us permission to do.
And you get to choose where the money goes, which is huge. Because there's times I've been on sets where they've spent so much money on something that the audience would never even notice or want, that could have gone to having more episodes, or paying the cast more, or paying your writers more, or paying to have writers, paying to have a director, paying to have these things, because there's a lot of productions that just don't. They expect the dungeon master to do everything, and you never get paid enough according to like the 9 different hats that you're wearing.
And the reality of independent projects is none of us are ever getting paid enough, but recognizing each other's value is so important. I mean, I've been producing, I ran a theater company in LA for 15 years. I produced a whole bunch of independent film projects starting in like 2007, 2008. Nobody can ever get paid as much as they're worth. But communicating that you understand everyone's value is the first and foremost thing. And I think the other big thing about indie projects too is not asking too much of the people who are collaborating with you, to make sure when you make an ask that it is do you have bandwidth for this? Here's the thing I'm going to ask you for. And it just requires you to do that. The project that we're all working on together, it's a sprawling project.
We've had a lot of time at the table and played a lot of Dungeons and Dragons from our youth all the way up to literally ran a game for some 11-year-olds this afternoon.
Hell yeah!
And throughout our experience, we've found methods, tips, tricks, mechanics that can heighten aspects of the game. And I was very inspired by a lot of fantasy that I grew up with: the Stark fantasy, the Rankin Bass Hobbit, Lord of the Rings by Bakshi, Excalibur, Labyrinth, and all this great music that we listened to growing up that also incorporated a lot of fantasy themes into it. And the more I stepped back, I was like, oh, you can kind of put parameters around that. And that's a genre of dark fantasy, which is what we've called progcore. And then realized that what did we love about all of that is these 3 things that we pull out of it, which is wonder, mystery, and danger. And how can we pass on what we've learned about playing to an audience that they can maybe apply these things to their games to heighten the wonder, mystery, and danger, and at the same time create a campaign setting that supports all of those ideas inspired by this dark fantasy of the 70s.
Yeah, and so we built a Kickstarter project that had a lot of multimedia components to it, because we all learn in different ways and we all enjoy our media in different ways. Some of us are going to read out of a book. Some of us want to see stuff on screen. And so we're doing a Kickstarter that is a role-playing game, a system-agnostic role-playing game guidebook that is all the tips and tricks that Todd was just talking about to bring the excitement of first time that you played to your games, and then a bunch of stories set in our world of fear. And this is where Jasmine's going to be lending us a hand. We've got a world Bible that Todd and I have been working on, and then we've got these small handful of just extraordinary writers and people of imagination to help us tell stories from various viewpoints in this world.
It's true. I'm a whimsical bitch. It's true.
Yeah, whimsical bitch is what I was going to say. We've got a bunch of whimsical bitches.
That's an official title, right?
Yeah.
You earned that title.
I did.
It's all of these extraordinary artists who happen to be our friends, who we can make the excuse to spend time collaborating with, and that's a large part of this as well. And then in the end, the people who fund the project get this, may I say, tome of wisdom from Todd's and my combined 80 years of role-playing game experience, which is a crazy thing to say, but true.
We have an example of the animatic of sort of the vibe of what we're doing already up and on the site, so you can check that out.
It reminded me a lot of a Venture Brothers episode in a good way.
That's cool. And they were very much inspired by animation from the 60s and 70s.
Yeah.
The Venture Brothers.
Yeah.
So the vibe is to try and capture, I think there's a lot of, and I love it myself, but there's a lot of current fantasy that's influenced by anime, but this sort of predates a lot of it with the Bakshi stuff. And actually, Rankin & Bass is one of the forerunners to anime. But in fact, a lot of the people who animated The Hobbit went on to form Studio Ghibli. But the animated Hobbit in 77, all of Last Unicorn, all of that animation style, really, it has a specific tone, and we really are trying to capture that, and so that it communicates a lot of what we're going for in a very short period of time. So check that out.
All of these stories they're intimate, and whether you're talking about the animation of that period, the Rankin Bass stuff, The Last Unicorn, I think, is a great example of this, or you're talking about the Studio Ghibli stuff that came after from it. There is an intimacy at the center of it. This is a small story at its center that may become epic through the course of the adventure, but at its center, it starts small and it starts personal. There are lots of deliberate choices. Whatever role-playing game you play, there are deliberate choices you can make to bring these feelings to it. And the stories in our book are going to be about that. The tips about gameplay are about that. How do we make this feel intimate and dangerous and thrilling and mysterious as we're playing this game that we already know, that we already understand?
David, you've been basically at the forefront of, you were there at the founding of, I guess, the sort of creating entertainment and content around the tabletop RPG space.
Thank you for
right?
that.
Yeah, you were at the helm of this.
Gold was 2007 and 2008.
Yeah, at the beginning, the type of stuff I grew up watching on YouTube. Where people, it was more indie, it was more punk. Speaking more from the creative and emotional side of it, is I think people do long for what D&D to them used to feel like. But there's a lot of misplaced sort of anger, hatred, that it's, women coming into the hobby. That's what ruined it. Ruined it.
A big thing, part of the word prog is, the word prog is short for progressive. And so
that's why we named this.
We want all of this, even the prog music was taking old ideas, but filtering them through more modern tools, whether that was synthesizers, electric guitars. So there's sort of a metaphor that we're carrying forward. Dark fantasy of the 70s, 80s, as delicious as it was riddled with all the things you were just talking about. Whether it was intentional or not, it was just part of it. And so we want to, as we say, put new wine in old bottles, still keep all that great style and flavor and vibe, but shed all of the shortcomings and hostility that came with it in the racism, sexism, homophobia.
And it's been a big thing of the last decade or so as role-playing games has entered this new era, is that there are people who are, and we're doing some of this right now, who are tapping into the nostalgia for the 70s and the 80s. We just talked about our influences. But when you do that, you have a real responsibility, because when you tap into that nostalgia and the beautiful art that came out during that time, you have to have the responsibility to first recognize that period was not good for everybody. that lots of people were left out, and deliberately so, or even not just left out, but like denigrated and pushed aside. You have to understand that that's true. And then you have to take responsibility for making sure, I said in another interview that those weren't the good old days for all of us, but we can make sure that these are the good old days for as many of us as possible. And so bringing what's beautiful from that time, and
and those things are not necessary for good storytelling.
No, and I think it's weird because people have, I think, a set of values they associate with me, knowing that I spent half my life in India, being a woman of color. When I tell them one of my favorite movies is Conan, they don't know what to do with that. Where I'm like, no, Conan the Barbarian is like the reason I got into comic books. I watched that religiously. Like that fucking silk pressed wig with the, I want to make that costume. The bangs.
It's a well put together film.
And the freaking those blue eyes and the serpents. That was my shit.
The soundtrack was the soundtrack of my gaming, and so the people telling the stories in our sort of 70s inspired dark fantasy world is a wide group of viewpoints, and that's going to be important.
I can't wait to see what you come out with. It's fun to see what people do with the stuff you write. You know, like I can't wait to see the actual
your
play.
Story with one of our artists and create. It'll be real. I'm just so excited. So PROGCORE fantasy.com.
Yeah, it's a project that needs to be made. It's a project that the people that you pitch it to don't understand why it needs to be made, but the people that are going to buy it do understand why it needs to be made, and it needs to be made by the right people.
Eliminate the overlords.
Yeah, because there's so many people that have been trying to revive like sort of what they view as the golden age of D&D, and I'm just happy to be a part of it in some way. So thank you for sharing your 80 years of combined Dungeons and Dragons.
To the guy at the Last Crusade where I chose poorly.